even Crips were banging on Crips and Bloods were banging on Bloods. It was all about making money.
He was getting chased around and they were unloading on him out of the car.
I just popped something open and pushed it on his neck and was like, told the other dude, run off or I'm gonna cut him.
This is Tangle Wild. It may look like any other low-income neighborhood in America, but it used to be ground zero for a gang war that took place in the 1990s. This war started when members of street gangs from Los Angeles moved to Tacoma and Seattle to tap into one of the most profitable illicit markets in the United States.
Police tell us that factions of the Crips and the Bloods are exporting their rock cocaine trade as far north as Seattle, as far east as Kansas City, traveling by car, bus, and commercial air.
Bilal Willis moved here from New York at age 10 and was immediately caught up in this gang culture. Back in the 90s, the Crips claimed 3rd Avenue and all of its cross streets in Tangle Wild. 3rd Avenue runs parallel through the poorest part of Tangle Wild. The Crips set up trap houses off of 3rd Ave and were pulling thousands of dollars a week. They dubbed 3rd Avenue Deuce Block and were known as the Deuce Block Crips. Bilal lived across the street from Tangle Wild in Thompson Place. He had to walk through the Crips territory to get home from school every day. Tangle Wild is located just north of Olympia and south of Tacoma in an area known as the unincorporated area. This place is hard to find accurate data on since it's actually not located in a city. But according to the local elementary school, Lydia Hawk, this area is over 2/3 minorities and most of them are low-income families. Hispanics make up the largest group, but it was mostly Black, white, and Asian families in the 90s. This is when parents were leaving the inner cities like Los Angeles in search of a better life for their kids, but they also brought their gang culture with them. Tangle Wild is also home to several rappers like FBL Militia and City Wilson who rep their neighborhoods in their music. The neighborhood is divided right down the middle by a street called Husky Way, which divides the middle class and lower class residents of Tangle Wild. The middle class side looks like any other neighborhood in America, but the lower class side has many people that live in desperate poverty. This leads some people to take shortcuts by dealing or committing crimes to make extra money. Scott grew up off of 3rd Avenue in Tangle Wild and other parts of the unincorporated area. This is where he used to deal until he went to prison when he was just 22 years old. Scott now owns a small business and is a Washington State certified peer counselor. He is outspoken about the inequalities in his old neighborhood. Scott was trained by Bilal Willis to be a peer counselor and certified by the state of Washington.
My name is Bilal Willis, aka Coach B. Living in Tangle Wild in the 90s, it was wild. It was, we were, in the 90s anyway, everybody was outside. It's not like today where, my kids that spend a lot of their time on the video games in the house, I always know where they are. It wasn't like that when we was young. My mom rarely knew when we were once we left outside the house. We had moved out here early to mid-90s from New York, came over here from Staten Island. My mom's single, me and my 2 brothers. She had one of the first neighborhoods we lived in was Tangle Wild. My mom's older sister lived like right up the street from each other in one cul-de-sac and then another cul-de-sac in Tangle Wild. And it was wild, Lacey had, a lot of activity back then. Some gangs, the gang culture was strong in Tangle Wild. It didn't feel like a pretty safe neighborhood back then. But it is what it is. It was typical 90s kind of neighborhood, especially for out here in the Northwest. Kids were running around till the lights was on, till the lights cut on at night, We spent a lot of time riding bikes and being active and going to the malls by ourselves. And, we had Tangle Wild Park where, gang stuff would take place.
So when I came home, it was just the city was at, Like me, I'm from G's, I'm from Deuce Block Gangsters.
It was fairly decent in comparison to you know, coming from New York and living in I remember we lived in Park Hill Projects, and then we lived in, I believe it was Stapleton Park. You know, I went to PS 57 Elementary, completely different environment, atmosphere from there, coming over to, you know, this type of area where it's way more open. You know, I'm from the city where, you know, most of the living units was 5, 6, 7-story buildings with fire escapes, and you know, the cops knew all the kids' parents in the neighborhood because it was just more interconnected. And, you know, when something happened, you know, community was involved.
The worst thing we ever did as a community was gangbang. That is the worst thing I ever did in my life, was be a gang member, start a gang. That is the worst thing. We need to get that out the way. The history that we was left with that turned into the Crips and Bloods, Vice Lords, El Rukins, Disciples, all of that, we was actually left with a message to uplift our community.
There was a lot of community and a lot of love out here too, especially back then in the 90s.
Be the next generation of elders, stand on the shoulders of our elders, and build up. People don't realize that the WIC program was started by the Black Panthers. They was feeding the community first. The worst thing we did was gangbang.
Because originally, like the Crips, you know, it was supposed to be like a, you know.
It was a community.
Yeah,
It was a community. Yeah, it was like Black Panthers. We Crips, we're like birthed from the Black Panthers. Right, we have connection with that, but
like took, you know, them like actually trying to make a movement and stuff.
Right. It just the pandemic changed that, dude.
Danny Bonds is part of the infamous Bonds family that helped start the Hilltop Crips in the 80s. Danny was only 12 years old when he joined the Hilltop Crips.
Because once the crack came into the equation, even Crips were banging on Crips and Bloods were banging on Bloods. It was all about making money. You know what I mean? If you were stepping on the next person's foot just to make money, then...
The Tacoma Police Department raided over 130 crack houses last year.
Is this the sixth time we've gotten your crack house?
I don't know, I haven't been counting.
Haven't been counting.
Because, I mean, you saw how people reacted on it, like the kids and shit. You saw that. You saw how families were destroyed. It just, the epidemic changed that, dude. And it started in LA where the Crips and Bloods originated, so that was the perfect spot for it. That perfect hot powder cake for that shit. Because once that shit hit, then nobody had any kind of respect for anybody. Yeah, I mean, the 90s was an experience, I'll tell you that. I'm surprised I survived it. I caught a bullet. I mean, one bullet. I mean, that's saying a lot for coming from that area. Like my brother, he got 9 times, over 9 times. So that was a bullet in his neck right here. You say he could taste that shit when it's cold outside.
He is no longer drawn to the gang life, and now occasionally raps about it in his music that he makes with his friend Jay Rush, who produces his beats for him.
Got a video.
Yeah.
I'll wait and see. You just look it up, Danny Bonds, wait and see.
That was a good experience. It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, even though like we had to be there like on set at 3 in the morning, and we sat out in the woods like for like 3-4 hours until sunrise came up a little bit, and then that's when we did that scene where I was burying him and shit like that. It's crazy, dude. It's a crazy video.
Back in the 1990s, local kids knew not to walk through here after dark unless you were from the neighborhood. This reputation was established by gangs like Deuce Block Crips, who called 3rd Avenue home. When the 3rd Avenue Pyrus started on the same street, this caused a war between the two groups. Anyone walking here at night back then wearing red or blue in this neighborhood were often victims of drive-bys that frequently occurred.
The Crips were chasing this guy around, and he ran up to our house, and he started banging on the door. My dad came to the door, and he told him he was getting chased around, and they were unloading on him out of the car. And my dad told him that he was sorry, but he had kids upstairs, and so he had to close the door in the guy's face. And I don't know what ended up happening to him, but it was just the kind of things that used to happen back then.
These drive-bys occurred at night and were rarely seen in the daytime. They also didn't actually have a charge for a drive-by yet. It was the early 90s, so teens were just charged with reckless endangerment and let right back out again. Even when they hit someone, it rarely meant serious time in the early 90s. This all changed when 13-year-old Larry Rogers lost his life to gang members in Lacey, just miles from the state capitol.
When the kid Larry Rogers got the thing, that shook the city, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there's so many people that watched him go, "Hey, can y'all save me a burger?"
This incident and several other similar tragedies led to Washington becoming the first state in the nation to vote in the 3 strikes you're outlaw in 1993. By the time that Bilal moved here from New York in the mid-90s, consequences had already become much harsher for gang members after Lacey adopted a zero-tolerance gang policy. There were also gang units that were patrolling Tangle Wild and the rest of the unincorporated area by then.
When I came into contact with like the gang culture in Lacey, it was really because my older brother was already involved. He had already became infatuated and then, participated in the gang culture that Lacey had, right? And it was like maybe 3 or 4 at the most, like known cliques or gangs, from Bloods, Crips, and TRGs. There were some Asian gangs that were like somewhere in between, right? And so I looked up to my brother. It was one of those things where, we was out here without a father and shit. Our mom was working a lot, taking care of us. So we was kind of like finding our own way. And, I had a brother 3 years older than me, really into martial arts and like fighting, and he took it to the streets. So, he was one of the few out here that was like calm and he considered, his moves when he was fighting. So it was like cool to be a part of that. And growing up with him, like we trained as like little brothers, being his little brother. And then I had a littler brother. And so when he was involved, it was enticing. It was, I was infatuated with him as my only male role model. So like getting involved and following his footsteps was like only like natural, like, right? That's where my love was coming from. That's where my acceptance was coming from. Like it started with my brother. So what he did, I was wanting to do.
When we was them younger kids following behind our older cousins, we was doing whatever they was until we found out who we was and came to manhood or whatever.
We used to look up to the Crips on our street. They would actually hang out with us. They would play football with us. They were just the older kids in the neighborhood back then.
Basically, around 10, 11, or 12, I was like thoroughly invested in like trying to be a gang member and trying to, wear the colors and we wore red, we was with that part of the thing, side of it, and our gang essentially was started by somebody who had more experience, right? Lived in California first and then brought it to Lacey. So it was taught to us. It wasn't something that we like picked up on watching TV or something. It was taught. Like we were trained in it. Like we were taught the bylaws, the rules, the do's, the don'ts, the getting the put on, the different codes around how you conducted yourself, like as that. And so it was that family. We was all obviously, unsupervised youth in large part. Parents was either split, single moms, or using drugs, or embracing the lifestyle that we wanted to. And in some cases we had parents, homies I hung out with whose parents was all the way with it and encouraged it and would take us to go steal beer from the store and drive the car away. And so there was that aspect too, like the older adults that was in and around us were a part of the madness that we were indulging in and encouraging it and congratulating it, celebrating it. So it made it easy to feel like this was what we were supposed to be doing, like this was how you did it, this was how you did life at the time. That's all we knew. Yeah, basically, I mean, when you want to talk about like the historical events that took place where gangs like emerged in Lacey, I can't really speak to, the who's and the whens and the exactlys, right? But, I was out here in the 90s when things were already kind of active. You know, there was Third Ave, there was Maniacs, there was Meadows, there was the Canines, the Ruthless, there was TRGs. You know, they were already established, you know, when I was young. So the one that my brother, you know, became infatuated with were, you know, through his relationships. Probably the first group of friends he got in touch with, you know, when we moved out here, and that led into, you know, that. But yeah, as far as I know, when it comes to like what really influenced us, it would be, you know, at least one OG that I could speak of, and I'm not going to name them for purposes of, you know, proprietary and permissions and situations, but just understanding that, you know, that person, at least in our particular shit, was from California originally, right? And so the indoctrination that we received was, this is how we do it, where, you know, this is where it started, right? So that gave somebody not only being older than us and was hella big and strong and all the things, you know, the epitome of what we looked up to back then, for like, you know, the OG gangster, tough, big, with the shit, strong, able to do whatever. And then because they're from Cali, it lended them that certain credibility. You know, when people were coming out here in those times from California, they were like received as authorities on gangbanging. So if you're being, you know, taught or a branch is being created, you know, by somebody from where, you know, the belief is that it was birthed, then that person has, you know, immense credibility and the ability to create his own gangs in different cities. And basically, you know, in a lot of ways in different areas, you know, in Washington, that's how the game started. And then they would branch off and call themselves something else. But originally, you know, so a lot of the gangs out here were brought here and taught how to do them. You know what I'm saying? And so that it was no different in Lacey. You know, it was brought here. You know, kids were introduced to it, taught it, trained in it, and then, you know, embraced it, and then it evolved as it evolved.
I left in '94, I got a recharge. I was gone for 2 years, I came home. I'm thinking everything's sweet, you know what I'm saying? My cousin Spook was like, nah, nigga, it ain't sweet out here no more. The homie sit me down the first day home, like, look, this happened, this happened, this happened. You feel me? We don't fuck with these niggas over here no more. They maniacs. We deuce box, nigga. It's 2200, who I woo. I'm like, okay. Peeping the scene out. I ended up getting jumped by some of the niggas. I ended up getting jumped by Kevin Moore and them. You know what I'm saying? One day, niggas tell me I gotta get put on. And I was like, that shit didn't even register in my ears. Hold on. You know, long story short, niggas got on me. Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I mean? So at 12 years old, you know, being a little bit more advanced in kind of the street life, you know, in Lacey than it is in New York, it made it easy to be in like a leadership role amongst my own peers, which, you know, when you're young and you taste like power, when people are willing to like do what you say, and it does something to you. You know, it creates something that you're not emotionally intelligent enough to even understand, you know. So when parents would say, oh, you can't hang out with Bilal because he's influencing this, I didn't understand what influence even meant. You know, it's like we would be together with our little group doing whatever, somebody would think of an idea and we'd be like, hell yeah, let's do it. And it wasn't always like I was the one orchestrating and playing the, you know, being the conductor of all the noise that was happening. You know, it was collaborative. We were all kids. We all were coming up with ideas, you know, throwing rocks through windows, ringing doorbells and running. You know, that's where it started, just little mischief. So, you know, having that mentality at 12 years old, here we are at Lydia Hawk, right, elementary in Lacey. I attended here. And one day with my little brother, I was in the 6th grade. He was in the 2nd grade or 1st grade probably. And we were walking home, cut through a little trail over here, Choker Street. We actually lived across from Tangle Wild in Thompson Place. That's where our house was. So it wasn't a long walk, but it wasn't a short walk for kids. You know, my mom worked a lot to make sure we had what we needed. At this particular time, I think my brother was already incarcerated in the juvenile system, right? So it was just me and my little brother and my mom. And yeah, we're walking home, 2 older kids, 7th, 8th graders. white kids, you know, started talking that racist shit and, you know, called themselves trying to press up on me, make fun of me and do the things like they were gonna jump me. So, like, this is where that mentality, that culture, it's like, how am I supposed to act in this situation? You know, first instinct is protect little bro. So I tell him, you know the way home, I'll catch up, run home, right? And I ended up having a Swiss Army knife in my pocket. I think I had just found it or something. Back in the day, all kids, you know, our age, bro, you know, with everything, you got the screw, the scissors, all the gadgets. Swiss Army knives were like birthday gifts back then. Little kids, you know, it was like a kind of like a passage to like manhood. When you're a young boy, you get the Swiss Army knife, and then maybe you get a pellet gun later. You know what I mean? That was back in the day where everything wasn't so scary for kids to have and do. And yeah, so I pulled that out. And as the kids were trying to, you know, engage in the confrontation, I grabbed one, opened up one of the things on there, and to this day, I can't even tell you if it was the knife or the screw or the scissor. I just popped something open and pushed it on his neck. It was like, told the other dude, run off, or I'm gonna cut him. You know what I'm saying? Like, you guys ain't about to get me. And that was that, right? He created enough space, let go of the kid, pushed him out the way, ran home, caught up with my little brother. End of story. I go to school the next day here at Lydia Hawk. They call me to the office. I walk in the office, you know, 12 years old, I don't know, 60 pounds maybe. Like, I was a skinny little kid. And I walk into the office, and I remember the door closed, and two grown-ass men, man, jumped me up, put cuffs on me, talking hella crazy to me. And like, we got your brother, and now we got you, and you going away. And, you know, it was super, super traumatic now that I know the language, now that I know, like, the kind of the root of what started my judicial entanglements. Right, the whole journey started right there, right with them doing that to me, and treating me in that way, and that ended up becoming me going to juvie. Them, nobody like reaching out to my moms. Nobody knew, like my mom didn't know where I was at, right? So I could imagine like what she was feeling, me being a father of 7 right now, and to see my 11-year-old disappear, and me not know where she at, only to find out she was defending herself from getting jumped and in juvie for it, right? So, you know, there was a lot of advocacy. My mom, you know, went and got help. I'm pretty sure there's a couple NAACP members involved back then. Like, it was a big deal out here when I got arrested for that. And I got charged with assault 2, with the deadly weapon, you know, 12 years old. I'm on probation. They had me on like maximum probation where I had a tracker and I had to check in, go to juvie school, and like all these different things. It was just, it was wild. And the whole time, I'm like, I didn't even start this shit. Like, I was really legit, like walking home from school, about to get bullied, and didn't let it happen, right? And so from there, I was just like, if that's what it is, then I got to do something to protect myself, right? My mom couldn't stop it. My older brother was locked up, and the gangs was like, we got this. So it was easier. It was survival mode. It was, you know, whatever you want to call it. But internally, that I believe is when something broke, something snapped, like internally, and you know, my lizard brain jumped in the front seat and pretty much drove for the next 28 years. So the charges ended up being assault 2 with the weapon. I pled to the charge. I pled to assault 2. You know, I had never navigated a court. My mom had never had to navigate a court. So, you know, I ended up doing 6 to 12 days, like inside. And then the rest of it was like that year of probation, you know, where I would get mad and run away or whatever, you know, beef with my moms and run out in the streets, and then she put a runaway warrant out. And so a lot of my earlier, like 12-year-old to 13-year-old, when I was on that probation for like that year or whatever, a lot of my like juvie stays, I became a frequent flyer. It was mainly for like not listening to my mom. You take a 12-year-old and put him in a cell? Like, that's not, I don't know, there's no words to really describe that. You can't really put that in a book and pinpoint like what that does to a child, especially on an individual level, you know, because everyone has their individual reaction and understanding of trauma. We could get in a car wreck, right? And the result of that car wreck could be neither of us get injured, but one of us never gets in a car again, and the other one jumps right back in the car the next day or drives off from the accident and never even thinks about it, right? Same exact traumatic experience. Individuals are going to respond according to however they're going to respond, you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, to try to put a title or I don't know, it's hard. It was scary. It was inhumane. Like, when you think about it, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would tear the city down if they grabbed my, 10-year-old son and put him in juvie without calling me, or, how many people I would try to sue and like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know what I mean? So the fact that was like common, I was in there with a whole bunch of other kids, you know what I mean? And there was violence in there, but it was, we're kids, So again, that it started to create that snowball effect of like my ability to exert leadership and have people look at me a certain way, So I would lay on my back and bicycle kick the door for hours, and just be that disruptor. Like, I fought against that, like it's similar to when you remember the movie when they grab Tarzan, right, and they throw him down in the cage, and he's fully dressed like Englishman, but this motherfucker's throwing his body against the walls, throwing, bloodying himself, and that's how I remember feeling, like being in there. It was like anti everything. Like, I threw my food, I fucking ran around, I kicked the doors, I flooded the toilets, like everything was fuck you, fuck this, fuck that, you know what I'm saying? And that behavior was rewarded by my peers that are also incarcerated, right? They thought that was reputable. That type of wildling reaction and response to being put in a cage, to them it was like, oh, he's cool, he's the guy. And so that perpetuated me to keep doing it, right? And that's kind of, like I said, it just the snowball effect of like all these different pieces of information and data that was coming in that was telling me that I would get better outcomes by being wild and defiant and being willing to, do the worst thing, or, be the first one to throw a punch in a brawl or something like that, no matter the outcome, right? It was always that, people praised it. They put it on a pedestal, especially to a fatherless, single mom household, incarcerated brother, or, you don't have somebody pouring into you that contradicts that data or information. If no one's telling you anything different is better, then what you're being told is good to do or okay to do, that's what you agree with is okay to do, because there's no contradicting evidence, or even my mom like whooped my ass and shit, but you're enforcing me to not do violence with violence. So if I have to listen to you because you can whoop me, because you're stronger and bigger than me, I'm taking that message to the streets. So if I whoop you, you have to listen to what I say, right? So the more people I whoop, the more people follow me. That to me, you know what I mean? So that's why I've learned when this type of reinforced behavior, even with parenting and the social construct, like if you teach somebody a thing, you can't beat somebody into not putting their hands on somebody, because you're teaching them with your actions that because I'm able to beat you is why I can instill or enforce this rule upon you, right?
This first time being locked up put Bilal on the path to prison and furthered his involvement with his gang. His crimes that started with petty vandalism became much more serious after this.
Yeah, 96, 97, 98, 99, I was 15, so there was a lot that really started to progress when it came to, my involvement in the gang culture and my evolution as, like, even at 15, known as like a factor and a leader in the space, you know what I mean? And I was selling already by that time. But like I said, I think 1999, chapter 2, right? That's when a lot of stuff, my experiences out here started to really evolve into something different.
Bilal is now a devoted father and community activist who speaks out about the harm caused by his early incarceration.
I'm an anger management specialist now, and I do a lot of research. I deep dive into anger management, and emotional regulation is one of my niches. I support people in helping them, build their emotional intelligence. And so kind of one of my concepts around that is, we call the reptile brain, the amygdala, our survival brain. That's where we can't think in logical terms, right? Our prefrontal cortex is where the logic lives, and your lizard brain, your reptilian brain, is the part that tells you, hey, I'm in danger, I'm being threatened, I need to, access ultimate survival mode, give me the strength to either run faster than I've ever ran, fight harder than I've ever fought, or maybe I can disappear, freeze, or fawn. Those are some of the later ones that they've been talking about with our responses. It used to be like fight or flight, right? Now there's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? And so anyway, so that's what I say, and when I wrote my first book, Coach B's 4 Cycles of Freedom, I kind of really go into that, so when you live in an illogical state of survival, that becomes a norm. So when people are like, oh, he's crazy, he's wild as fuck, I was always reacting to things that I was perceiving as threats to my life. And so some of the things I did were an attempt to get ahead of it, right? Like if I felt threatened by somebody, before I would let them surround me or get me in a situation, I would just act overtly on the offensive and just, and it worked a lot of the times. I would just get real loud, real wild, and real violent, and people would be like, I don't know if I want to, I'm good, never mind, you know what I mean? And so once, again, now that I know what I know, psychologically, like the studying, the research, I think essentially when somebody does something, uses a coping mechanism and get the results they want, they stick with it. It makes sense. It's not broke, don't fix it, right? So when I started to see that if I was a little bit more extra, a little bit more willing to engage in violence with what would appear outwardly to be a I don't give a fuck attitude, really it was like, I don't want to get hurt, so I'm gonna make sure that people don't think about it hurting me. So I was trying to protect myself even when I wasn't in the room with people, because they hear about shit I did and be like, nah, I wouldn't want to put myself in that crosshairs.
Like B, you know what I'm saying? Like, he did the most for a long time in his life.
Yeah.
But I think that he was tired of, doing what he was doing and wanted to help people, and
got tired of going to the pen, got tired of being in the system. You know what I mean? Like, it's good to see him out here doing his thing and being positive and being the solution, the person you go to when you have a problem like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people are not out here doing that type of shit. I mean, everybody's for themselves.
They got hidden agendas and stuff, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Everybody has a hidden agenda, and really, he doesn't.
He's just giving back to what, he took kind of sort of, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's just hella respectable and shit, like,
It feels better. I mean, shit, it has to feel better. I mean, when you're out here doing bad, like, you're constantly on edge, you're constantly paranoid, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. But when you're out here and you're providing help and a solution to be better, then, hey, like, that's a beautiful thing, man. Coming from where you came from.
When you see him talking about you, you know that it's for good stuff.
Yeah.
His book, 4 Cycles of Freedom, gives a very useful insight on how someone can free themselves and start improving their lives, even if they are in prison or in the grips of addiction, and we will put the links to his books in the description below. Siddy Wilson spent 20 years in prison and started rapping when he came home. He now focuses on his music and being a father to his kids.
I'm gonna tell you this, if you a real one, you don't wanna go do what we did, you wanna go make a movie about what we did. If you a real youngster out here talking about you a boss, you wanna go make a movie about what we did, right? And the shit, cause we can live to tell you about it. And that's what the blessing is.
And now it's just part of our lived experience to be able to share the things that we went through growing up.